Hi, I'm Judith. I'm a Canadian and I'm more than 80 years old. And today I'm going to talk about civic duty, which doesn't sound like it has very much to do with being successful, being just having a happy, successful, and fulfilling life, but I believe that it does at some level. So today, what sparked this is that today, for the first time in my life, I went off to a protest on a Saturday afternoon, and I stood outside on the street with us holding a picket, a sign, two signs actually, back to front, two signs, about a government. And it doesn't matter what party it was, and it does. I'm in Ontario, so it's obviously a Canadian protest, or at least an Ontario protest. And it really doesn't matter what side of the fence politically you're on. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, well, for one thing, I think there are two things about that. One was I felt it was my civic duty to do that because I'm very concerned about some things that are happening in my province, and I wanted to help to get the word out to other people in the province about that. We have a number of years before there can be election. Will be an election again here, but those things shouldn't go unnoticed. And when things are happening in your country, in your province, in your city, in your state, wherever you are, in your county, in your neighborhood, you need to be able to speak out about them in a peaceful way, to say this is not right. This is not how we want things to be. And I also phoned our provincial member of parliament's office the other day to express my displeasure at something. I write to the prime minister fairly often. I have never done any of these things before in my life. I'm not saying that it's really necessary to become as activist as I am becoming. But I gotta tell you that I do think that part of living a happy and successful and fulfilling life is living according to your values and actually standing up for your values. And also I think that part of having a good and happy life is living up to your duties as a citizen. Now, duties do not require you to go to protests or to phone the local MPP or to write letters to the prime minister or all the things that I'm doing these days. But they do require you, I believe, to number one, to pay your taxes. And to not cheat on your taxes. I understand people who don't, who work on the black and so on, but I really object to that. We all need to contribute. And that goes in big part for bigger corporations and multimillionaires. They ought to be paying their fair share for sure. So I'm, I get more upset about that than I do about the occasional waitress who doesn't declare all their tips or whatever, or the house cleaner who doesn't declare all their income. But I do believe that it's important as part of your civic duty to pay taxes. I also and not to be delinquent on them either if you can help it. And if you can't pay them, don't just not file them and hope that they don't figure that out, because then you have a mess. And I've talked about messes in other videos. File your taxes, say, I can't pay, what can I do? Can I do a payment plan? Whatever. Figure out a way, go to a credit counseling place if necessary. They can sometimes, or a place that helps you deal with taxes. They can help you negotiate a different amount or whatever. But if you just let it ride, you're going to be faced with interest charges and penalty charges, and it'll get a lot worse. So don't do that. Just be accountable. And of course, when I start doing finance videos, I'm going to tell you to be putting aside the money. If tax money isn't deducted automatically from your paycheck, to be putting away money for taxes as part of your staying in solid financial shape. I take everything that I say not as financial advice, by the way, in terms of, I don't know, I'm not a financial advisor. Don't buy and sell on my investments on my say so. And I won't be talking about that anyway. But the idea is that you should pay your taxes, because we all benefit from the roads, from the schools, from the education of our population, from, yeah, some money gets wasted. I know it does. And stand up and talk about that. But, and money is inappropriately allocated, and there's grift, and there are all those things. But the majority of the money is still going to keep our society going, to pay for our social services, to pay for our health care in Canada, and so on. So you need to be doing your fair share of that. The second thing is to vote, and to vote at every level that you can, to vote at your municipal level, at your provincial or state level, at your country level, your federal level. I'm talking mainly to Canadians and Americans here, but if you live in another country, a country that isn't a democracy, I hope that you get to vote. Even then, I can't talk though about what the issues and dangers are in that kind of a society of rebelling against an authoritarian leader. So you'll have to figure that out for yourselves. Luckily, in Canada, thus far, we don't have that. I had an American friend today comment on my Facebook post about going out, stay safe. And I could reply, it's pretty safe in Canada to go out and protest. It's not an issue. Nobody has a gun. You know, we're not, it would be so rare to have anything happen. It just doesn't, it won't. And no one's taking your picture, your facial picture or whatever for profiling, you know, for agents or anything like that. You can just stand out there in the street corner and hoot and holler and wave at the cars as they go by and show your signs and try to raise awareness. At any rate, I'm not really talking about the protests, but pay your taxes, vote, and be an informed citizen, be an informed voter. I have little to no patience or even understanding people who say, oh, you know, politics is so hard, it makes me so depressed that I can't look at it, and so I'm just not going to pay any attention, you know, because it's just too hard to look at. I have members of my family who do that. I'm not saying stay on your phone all day and look at news. I am not saying that at all. But and I understand that when you have busy lives, I mean, I spent most of my life being really busy. You don't have time to go to protests. You don't have time to be looking at everything the government says about everything. But by gosh, watch the news once a week, or pick out one independent media person you really trust who writes a newsletter every night. I have a friend who she's Canadian. She spends time in the States. She reads one American writer who writes every night that she who writes and shows sources, so she trusts that person's recounting of the events that are going on. She reads that, and I think she listens to one Canadian news program a day, and she gets a couple of headlines maybe when she happens to go on social media. And that's it. That's all she does. But she stays fairly well informed, even at that. So you don't have to spend all your time doing it. You don't have to spend all your time thinking about what a misery this world is in with the governments and the wars and whatever is going on. This is April 2026. The world's in some sad state in many ways, in many places. I'm trying to do what I can with regard to my own government, with my own country, to be an activist because I have the time to do that. And I believe that any little bit that I can do will help in future generations. I live in a democracy. I'm very happy to live in a democracy. I want it to remain a democracy. But one of the things we've seen over the years, you can see it in many countries, Hungary, in Poland, in Russia, in in the Ukraine years ago, and how it's gotten better in Canada, and yes, in the U.S. And in many other countries, you can see that democracy, that our freedom does not is not kept by lethargy or indifference or by taking it for granted. We have to be on guard for it. And Canadian national anthem says we stand on guard. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. And I really believe that that's true, that every country you have to stand on guard for democracy. So I'm one of the people who has the time and the interest to watch and be careful and write to the Prime Minister and write to the MPPs and to the Premier and so on. So I can be a bit of an activist in my old age. Um, but you don't need to do that to be happy, successful, and fulfilled. What I am saying is that to be really truly successful, I believe that you have to play your part in community, and doing some community service is always a good thing. I do some, not as much as I would like to. I'm not ADHD. I'm not good at doing something every week all the time, but community service, volunteer work is good if you can work that in, um, and and just staying at least minimally informed about what's going on, especially before an election. Really look at your candidates, really, and then go out and vote um, responsibly, not just by party. Vote for your candidate, for the person, for the candidate, for the strategy, whatever you have to do. But know the political scene and know something about civics and know something about how your government works. If you're in Canada, know what's a provincial responsibility versus a federal responsibility. So you're not blaming the feds for health and education because that's basically the provinces. Um, and you're not blaming, the provinces for the roads because normally that's municipal if you're in a city and so on. So just be informed and do your part as an adult, as a responsible adult for society, because that along, I mean, I'll talk another time about volunteer work and so on, but that will make you feel good. It's a form of giving and it's a form of adulting, you know, that is really, really important. Um, if it's all just about you, if your life is totally just about you and what you can have and what you do and what you're doing, and you don't want to hear about anything else that affects anybody else, well, guess what? What happens in your government, what happens in your province, in your city, in your state, those things affect you. They affect you. They affect your freedom, they affect your happiness, they affect the degree of fear you will have. They affect the degree of security that you will have, both financial security in terms of social programs and and uh, your physical safety. Look at guns in the US. Sorry folks in the US, but look at guns. We have a better situation here. It's not perfect. Other countries have done it even better than we have. So um, that's my thing for today. I think it's pretty short. Um, but I really believe that if you do your duty, and I'm not talking about duty in the armed services here, although if you do something like that, that's even better. But do your duty to your fellow citizens, to your society, to your government, and so pay your taxes, vote, be an informed citizen, and where you can, speak up when you see things that are wrong. Talk to your friends. Online squabbling doesn't do much good. You can post all you want about all the atrocities going on in the world and how upset you are about them, and not much is going to happen. I do post about some things political. Usually nobody comments. That's just how it is. Um, you don't have to have arguments with people, but it does help if you can talk uh, and say, "Gosh, I didn't see it that way." I've got someone who I see regularly who is pretty fond of a party I don't approve of at all, and I'll say to her, "What is it that makes you want to vote for that party? I want to understand." Um, and I'll listen to speeches from the leader of that party, because she says, "Wow, that was a really good speech that guy gave," and I'll listen to it. Sometimes I can't listen to it all, I'll tell you, but I try. I try to be open-minded and to listen to see what the issue is, so that maybe I can counter with facts that help her to see my point of view, you but always civilly and always respectfully. So I don't care which party you vote for, frankly. I don't care which side of the fence you're on about things. I just think you need to participate. You need to do your bit as a citizen to the best of your conscience and your ability and your values. And that will help you to be a happy person. Honestly, it really will. So I guess I'm all I'm going to say for today, but take care. This won't come out for, I don't know, several weeks. I'm a bit ahead. We're planning to go away in a couple of months, and um, for a period of time, and so we've got some vacation time coming up, and if we do go away, I will not be doing these videos during that time, so I've got to kind of get ahead of myself a little bit. Anyway, so this will come out in a few weeks, but it'll come out sometime in May instead of April, where we are now. Anyway, until then, take care, be a good citizen, and be a good person, and take good care of yourself. Do what you can to find joy in the day and to live a happy life. Till the next time.